Hello guys, it is me, the Tank, and Next here. And before we start the video, I just like to thank a person who's watched the channel. His YouTube name is Die Panzer Kanon. In my original video on Little Willie and the #1 Lincoln Machine, I had made several mistakes that were actually pretty major, and he also pointed out mistakes on another video, which I will be remaking soon as well. So I just like to thank him for correcting me, because I am fairly new to this. I've never really done an informative YouTube channel like this. I mean, I have a gaming channel, but I don't really have to inform people of anything. That's just me making really shitty Civ 5 videos. So, I just like to thank him for, pointing this out, and now hopefully I can better my channel. With that, I'm still trying to, verify my information and stuff like that. But, yeah, so thank you, and let's get on the video with the Landship Committee. So, before its beginnings, in late 1914, Colonel Ernest Swindon suggested adding armor to Holt artillery tractor, but his idea was rejected. Military high command at the time really just didn't like mechanization. In February 1915, Winston Churchill, current First Lord of the Admiralty and later Prime Minister, formed the Landship Committee to talk about the possibility of armored vehicles, which he saw as a definite idea. Being a cavalry member, he was pretty forward on mobility and stuff like that, even if not directly via motorization. The original members were, of course, Winston Churchill, Eustace Tennyson d'Eyncourt, who was the director of naval construction at the Admiralty, Colonel Wilfred Dumble, who was a naval brigade officer, and Flight Commander Thomas Hetherington of the Royal Navy Air Service Armored Car Squadron, which basically had a bunch of armored cars serving around Belgium and northern France. The first meeting was held at Winston Churchill's home, as he was sick at the time. As for the first concept, I couldn't find any related pictures, so here's just some pictures of young Winston Churchill, who was a very dapper lad. The original goal of the committee was to quite literally produce landships, essentially versions of battleships on land. It was basically World War I cinema at the start, and this was amazingly shown with Hetherington's original design, which was over 100 feet long with 3 twin-gun turrets. While we see that ridiculous now, the committee literally saw this as a possibility and commissioned the William Foster and Company to produce the machine. It was sort of like a giant wheel to destroy barbed wire and other obstacles, but thankfully development never got far because the committee realized that the idea was horribly stupid. For its further concepts, the Triton Trench Crosser, keep in mind the name Triton, that'll be important later, would lay out a metal bridge over a gap, cross it, and then recover the bridge. It was made by an artillery tractor from William Triton, but the concept was thrown out after initial trials. Then came the Pedrail Tractor Company, who produced a giant vehicle that would house 50 solid infantrymen with 2 giant tracks moving it forward. You can see it here and here. Those are the 2 pictures. However, the company only managed to produce an unarmored version to present for the committee, and so the idea was scrapped because they really didn't like that. I mean, this is not very impressive. This was one of the first vehicles in the project to actually use tracks, and it did show that tracks were the correct direction to go in. Famous inventor R.A.B. Crompton, who did a lot with electricity for England, was even asked to produce the design. And his design also used tracks and also gave a decent idea what a tank should be. Now onto the design that stuck. After the failure of the Pedrail machine and other such ideas and the Triton Trench Crosser, a new project was underdone. Developed by William Triton and other people, it was named the #1 Lincoln Machine. And it was actually well liked by the Landship Committee, and they decided to move development forward and begin construction. In the yard of the Wellington Foundry, it was shown that the tracks did have a lot of problems, so they changed to a more crude but successful track design that would be really implemented all the way through World War I British tanks up to the Mark 8 Liberty or International, even though the tracks did have the downside of limiting speed. A wheeled tail was also added to the Mark 1 in the back to improve steering, and which would all continue all the way to Mark 1. As for statistics, the name was later changed to Little Willie as a dirty joke and a reference to the Kaiser's eldest son. The tank would not only have sponsons, but also have a turret that was removed in later World War I landships. It weighed 16.5 tons with a supposed 6-man crew. It would have a Vickers 2-pounder gun in the turret, or a pom-pom gun as it's called, with machine guns on the sponsons. It was said to have up to 6 Madsen guns, which is quite a lot. But it would only be able to go a pitiful 2 miles an hour with only 10mm armor that would boilerplate. The vehicle was designed by William Triton, who was a recurrent character in the Landship Committee and British tank design, and Walter Gordon Wilson. If you watch my video of the World War I medium tanks, you will hear their name a lot. I do recommend that video. The Little Willie still exists at the Bovington Tank Museum, and it narrowly avoided being scrapped during 1940 for the war effort. Now for the committee's military integration. Originally, the committee was held in secret from Lord Kitchener and the War Office, as they were expected to block the project like they did many attempts at mechanization. This is Lord Kitchener of the War Office. You will recognize his face from a lot of World War I propaganda posters. Your whole country needs you. He was sort of their Uncle Sam. But in July 1915, while testing the Little Willie design, the committee did come to the attention of the War Office, and then it was adopted into the Army, and it also gained several new members from the Navy. It was renamed the Tank Supply Committee, and it was now a branch of the Ministry of Munitions. From December 1915, Tank was a code name for the project, which is why it was renamed into that. As for the evolution of the concept, now as officially part of the War Office, Wilson wanted to make a new prototype, with tracks going all the way around the vehicle to help in mobility through horrible terrain that was seen in World War I. The turret was also removed to replace with primary weapons in sponsons, which would be a recurring theme in World War I tanks. Its extended track was tested in December 1915, labeled Her Majesty's Landship Centipede. And with that, you could see that battleships and naval ideas were still a major part in this. As you know, of course, you have stuff like HMS Warspite and King George V. That's what it was called, Her Majesty's Ship. And this one was called Her Majesty's Landship Centipede. After that, it was nicknamed Big Willie after the Kaiser, though it was also referred to as Mother. And the testing was found successful enough to be the basis of the Mark I tank, which would of course be the basis of all produced World War I British tanks, apart from the Mark VIII. It was very influential in British tank design, with British tank operators referring to the tanks as Willies throughout the war. And although never seen combat, it was a very important part of tank history. In conclusion, the Landship Committee was a vital step forward in military history, kickstarting what we now know as the tank. After initial failures, it reached an apex with the Little Willie design being a success, and its further iteration and second prototype, Mother, being the basis for the Mark I, which in itself would be the basis for all British landships of World War I, which in itself would be the basis for all tanks, period. So you can see that this kickstarted a domino effect. Once again, I'd like to thank Die Panzer Kanon for his comments, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.